Welcome to today's reading from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Mysteries of Creation. We are reading from chapter 5 at the moment, the cause of all causes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yesterday, Narad was listening from his father Brahmaji about the intricate layers of creation manifested by Krishna's inconceivable potencies. So we'll continue from there. Thus far I have explained how the mode of ignorance acting upon ahankar produces subtle and gross matter. Now I shall describe the action of Gyan Shakti, which is produced when the mode of goodness acts on ahankar. Gyan Shakti generates the mind along with its presiding deity, the moon god. As well as the other deities controlling the other bodily functions. Brahma explained that the Dikpal, the 10 gods controlling the 10 direction, preside over the ears. The wind god Vayu presides over the skin. The sun god Ark controls the eyes. The water god Varuna controls the tongue. The Ashwini Kumar twins preside over the nose. The fire god Agni controls the voice. Indra, the king of the gods, the hands. The god named Mitra presides over the anus, and chief progenitor Daksha presides over the genitals. Narad was intrigued. This is so interesting, my lord. Without the sanction of the presiding gods, no one's body can properly function. That is correct, Narad. Conditioned souls always depend on higher powers. However bewildered by ahankar, they do not realize this. Brahma then described how the mode of passion acts upon ahankar. This produces the Kriya Shakti, which generates the sense organs, namely the ear, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, anus, along with intelligence and the life air. Thus, by the 3 material modes, the Lord manifests the primary creation. Under his guidance, I, the secondary creator, am merely the engineer who assembles the parts. So Brahmaji is saying that he is merely an engineer who is assembling the parts, and Lord manifests the primary creation. Narad felt ineffable joy. Though it was late and he knew his father had matters to attend to, he longed to hear more. Placing his palms together, he said, "If there is more to the creation, then kindly tell me." "Narad, my son, there are countless universes within which the Mahat Tattva develops over thousands of years. Only when the Lord enters them do they come to life. Kindly explain how this happens." Lying on the causal ocean, Mahavishnu divides himself to enter each universe as Garbhodakshai Vishnu. He lies on the Garbhodak ocean, which fills half the shell of each universe. Simultaneously, he assumes the universal form or Virat Roop with thousands of legs, arms, mouths, heads, etc. Narad asked, "Is this the form that the philosopher yogis meditate upon?" "No, these yogis meditate on an imaginary conception of the universal form. The actual Virat Roop is invisible and inconceivable. In trying to conceive of it, philosophers imagine that the physical universe is the Virat Roop. The universe is like the clouds in the sky or dust in the air. Sky and air are invisible, but we can see the clouds and dust that indicate their presence." Similarly, the actual universe form cannot be seen. but we can see the planetary systems lying on it. Therefore, yogis imagine the upper planets to be the upper parts of the Lord's body, universal body, and the lower planets to be his lower limbs. Does everything within the universe correspond to the Virat Roop? Narad asked. Yes, listen as I describe the many representations of that form. The Brahmanas are born from his face, the Kshatriyas from his arms, the Vaishyas from his stomach, and the Shudras from his legs. The lower planets up to the earth rest on his legs. The middle planets, known as the Bhuvarlok, rest on his navel, and the higher planets, known as Swalok and Maharlok, rest on his chest. From his collarbone to the top of his neck lie the Gyanlok and Tapolok planetary systems where the great sages reside. My planet Satyalok resides on the head of the Virat Roop. Brahma described how the 7 lower planetary systems from Atal down to Patal rest upon the lower part of the Virat Roop. In this way, there are 14 planetary systems situated on the Lord's universal body. Narad felt confused. He had previously heard his elder brothers, each of them great scholars, refer to the universe as having 3 planetary systems. He mentioned this to his father. This is also true, said Brahma. Sometimes the planetary systems are categorized as being 3 only. The 7 lower planetary systems can be considered as one. Bhuvarlok is the middle planetary system, and from Swarglok up to the Satyalok is considered the higher planetary system. Just at the time of goddess Saraswati entered Brahma's chambers, folding her palms and bowing her head, she said, "My lord, many gods and saints await your audience." Brahma nodded. Then he turned and smiled at Narad. "This conversation with you has been so refreshing, my son. I'm always beleaguered with the matters of universal administration. Today, however, you have blessed me by giving me the opportunity to speak about my Lord Krishna. If you wish, you may come again tomorrow and we shall discuss more." Narad bowed low to his father. He felt infused with joy as he left Brahma's quarters. He ruminated on all he had learned. Everything emanates from the body of Karanodakshai Vishnu, an expansion of Narayan, who expands from Krishna and is also known as Mahavishnu. He expands as Garbhodakshai Vishnu to enter each universe. On his spiritual body, the universal planets rest, just as dust is carried by the air. Overawed at Krishna's greatness, the sage was eager to hear more about him. Now we'll begin chapter 6, the universal form. Brahma continues to describe the creation, explaining how all aspects of the universe are produced by different parts of the Lord's Virat Roop form. He concludes by saying that even he, Brahma, cannot fully understand the material creation, what to speak of the spiritual world, about which he knows nothing. The next day, after Brahma's public audience with the gods and celestial sages, Narad again approached his father in the privacy of his personal quarters. Brahma warmly welcomed his son and offered him a seat. Narad said, "My lord, I would like to understand more about the creation. You explained how everything emanates from and rests upon Vishnu's body. If you so wish, please explain this in greater detail." Brahma beamed, clearly enlivened by his son's inquiries. He liked nothing more than to describe Krishna's glory to an enthusiastic hearer. "My dear son, how wonderfully you engage your speech. This power of speaking arises from the Virat Roop's mouth." Narad said, "Father, yesterday you explained how each faculty of the living entity is governed by a god. Who governs speech?" "Your question increases my joy more and more," replied Brahma. "Listen, dear son. I shall explain everything. The fire god Agni directs speech." Seated on a jeweled couch, Narad folded his palms respectfully as he listened to his father describing the Virat Roop. The entire universe comes from the Lord's spiritual body as he lies on the Garbhodak ocean. From his 7 layers of skin arise the 7 meters used to compose the Vedic hymns. His tongue generates the varieties of foodstuffs offered to the gods, forefathers, and people in general. From his nostrils come the 5 kinds of life airs. His smelling power generates the twin Ashwini Kumar gods along with the medicinal herbs. His sense of smell also produces the earth element. From his breathing power comes fragrance. This made sense to Narad. The Ashwini gods were the heavenly physicians whose cures were medicinal herbs administered nasally. And the earth, of course, was the source of all fragrances. Brahma went on. His sense of sight produces foam and fire, and from his eyeballs, which glitter and illuminate, come the sun god and the heavenly planets. From the ears which hear on all sides comes the ability to receive Vedic knowledge, as well as the gods that govern the 10 directions. From his sense of hearing comes the sky and sound. Narad recalled how fire's subtle element is form and that of the sky is sound. Touching the back of his of one of his elegant golden hands with the other, Brahma continued. The Lord's skin and sense of touch give rise to the vibrational energy of all things, as well as the auspicious sacrifices, the wind god Vayu, and all kinds of touch sensation. Narad was puzzled how were these connected. Brahma smiled. As I explained previously, touch is the subtle form of air, or the means by which it is experienced. Air is thus vital for touch. Touch also depends upon an object's vibrational energy. How is that, my lord? Because the sensory receptors in the skin respond to the vibrations or frequencies of material objects, giving the various touch sensations we experience. Narad's eyes opened wide. How wonderfully intricate was Lord's creation. Brahma continued, just as Vayu directs the planets in their orbits by the movement of air, so does auspicious sacrifice transports the living beings to the celestial planets. Narad sat enthralled as his father explained the correspondence between Vishnu's limbs and creation. His bodily hairs produce vegetation as well as trees required for Vedic sacrifice. Clouds come from his beard and hair, and his powerful nails are the source of electricity, stones, and iron ores. From the Virat Roop's arms are born the principal gods who protect the universe. The Lord's footsteps are the shelter of the world, and from his feet come protection from fear and the fulfillment of our every need. From his genitals arise water, semen, rains, and the Prajapatis, who are the forefathers of all species. His genitals also create the pleasure of sex, which makes one forget the difficulties of having children. From his anus appears the controlling deity of death. Yama, along with the god Mitra, and his rectum is the source of envy, misfortune, death, and hell. The Virat Roop's back generates destruction, irreligion, and ignorance. His veins produce the rivers and the streams, and his bones and mountains, and his bones the mountains. In his abdomen rest the conditioned living beings after the cosmic annihilation, and in his heart resides their subtle bodies. His consciousness manifests religious principles, truth, and transcendental knowledge. Brahma closed his eyes. He appeared to be stunned. Tears trickled down his face. Narad could understand that his father was overwhelmed by the ecstatic love for Vishnu. He waited patiently. After a few moments, Brahma slowly opened his eyes and continued speaking as if nothing had happened. So we will continue from here onwards tomorrow. So Brahmaji, who has been given the task of putting everything together in this material world, even he feels bewildered after hearing all these intricacies of the generation of the universes and the creation. So we can just imagine how we feel when we hear all this. But one thing I will take away today from this reading is that the ultimate peace lies in the feet of Lord. They give us peace. Thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.